Remember those long lines you guys would all film of cars, decent looking cars, not jalopies, nice cars, just waiting for a box of food to be put in the trunk? In the United States of America, waiting for over an hour to get food in a trunk? And we provided rent and mortgage assistance to keep people from being evicted and thrown out in the street. Our approach to help Americans who need it the most was necessary.
And after a spring of high gasoline prices and a summer that saw inflation top 9%, Connecticut Democrats are reminding voters this week of the dollars in the state is pushing back into family budgets. But even as Governor Ned Lamont was reminding shoppers to take advantage of another sales tax-free week and watch their mailboxes for the child tax rebate checks, Republicans noted that the state's track record at getting relief out the door is not that great. One program to help essential workers who are caught in the crisis has dispersed less than 2% of its funds after 7.5 months, and even the child tax rebate has left $32.5 million unclaimed. Besides the child tax rebate, there was a temporary boost in aid for working poor families and an expansion of the state income tax that offsets local property tax bills.
And it was the right thing to do, and it helped people avoid financial crisis, which helped our whole country as a consequence of that. That didn't benefit them, it benefited the whole economy. Our approach is why America's economic recovery was faster and stronger than any other advanced nation in the world. Now it's time to address the burden of student debt in the same way. Working closely with the Secretary of Education, he's got the hard job, Secretary Cardona. Here's what my administration is going to do: provide more breathing room for people so they have less burdened by student debt. And quite frankly, to fix the system itself, which when we came in, we both acknowledged was broken in terms of, anyway. There are three key factors what we're going to do today. First, we've made incredible progress advancing America's economic recovery. We've wound down pandemic relief programs like the ones on unemployment insurance and small businesses. It's time we do the same thing for student loans. Student loan payment pause is going to end. It's going to end December 30. I'm extending to December 31st, 2022, and it's going to end at that time. It's time for the payments to resume. Second, my campaign for president, I made a commitment. That would provide student debt relief, and I'm honoring that commitment today. Using the authority Congress granted the Department of Education, we will forgive $10,000 in outstanding federal student loans. In addition, students who come from low-income families, which allowed them to qualify to receive a Pell Grant, will have their debt reduced to $20,000. Both of these targeted actions are for families who need it the most. Working and middle-class people hit especially hard during the pandemic, making under $125,000 a year. If you make more than that, you don't qualify. No high-income individual or high-income household on top of the 5%, in the top 5% of incomes, by the way, will benefit from this action, period. In fact, about 90% of the eligible beneficiaries make under $75,000 as families. Here's what that means. If you make under $125,000, you get $10,000 knocked off your student debt. If you make under $125,000 a year and you received a Pell Grant, you'll get an additional $10,000 knocked off that total, for a total of $20,000 relief. 95% of the borrowers can benefit from these actions. That's 43 million people.
There was another blow delivered to the Biden administration with the release of a poor inflation report that showed consumer price growth spiked in May. The Labor Department's Consumer Price Index rose 1% last month alone and 8.6% in the 12-month stretch ending in May. But Biden on Friday stressed that he is sympathetic to the impact of high inflation on families. During a press conference, Biden stated, "I understand Americans are anxious, and they're anxious for a good reason. Inflation is a real challenge to American families." What are your thoughts on this, everybody? Will President Biden finally do something for the American people and help people out with stimulus checks this year? So I believe that President Biden, everybody, can do more for the American people with stimulus checks. $700 stimulus payments have officially been approved by lawmakers. These checks will only be going out to a new targeted group of Americans, including those that are experiencing financial difficulties right now. More pressure is now on Congress to approve a fourth round of checks. Schumer is already proposing a new plan, and it was announced that the West Liberty City Council voted unanimously to move forward with a plan to distribute $700 stimulus checks to city residents that were previously excluded from the crisis relief. The plan would use $147,000 in local American Rescue Plan funding, which was allocated to states, cities, and counties to provide economic assistance for households negatively impacted by the crisis. A formal resolution is expected by June 21st, and the two city councilors argued for larger checks of $1,400, saying they plan to continue advocating for bigger checks up to the formal resolution. Now, it is really great to see that some lawmakers are finally taking action for the American people. West Liberty will become the second city of Iowa and one of the few cities in the country to set up a direct payment program using a portion of its American Rescue Plan funding. The state of Maine has also started sending out stimulus checks. Maine sent out its initial wave of $5,000 checks and $50 each on June 1st, and intends to send 200,000 checks per week in the future. According to the Maine governor, the state stimulus was signed into law as part of the state's budget surplus in late April. In a new announcement, the governor said the budgets of so many hardworking Maine people have been stretched to the brink of inflation. And while we cannot control inflation or global markets, we can make sure that Maine people have what they need to grapple with these rising costs. Through hard work, Democrats, Republicans, and Independents come together to do what is right for the Maine people. I hope this will provide at least a measure of relief for people during these tough times. Now guys, I believe it's a good idea for President Biden to do this and send out more stimulus checks, for sure. If you guys agree, tell me in the comments down below.
Too long, our nation's veterans have faced an absurd indignity. They enlisted to serve our country, went abroad in good health, and came back only to get sick from toxic exposure endured while in the line of duty. As many as 3.5 million veterans have been affected by burn pits since 9/11. Yet, approximately 80% of all disability claims connected to burn pits have been rejected by the VA. So many of our veterans have been fought by the VA after they fought for us as they tried to get health care benefits. Many of them had to hire lawyers just to prove their illnesses and then do a complicated legal dance to show what everyone knew, that toxic exposure from burn pits caused all kinds of cancers and other diseases. That was so wrong. The indignity, the callousness of forcing veterans who got sick as they were fighting for us because of exposure to these toxins to have to fight for years in the VA to get the benefits they deserved, well, that will soon be over, praise God. To these American heroes who have carried on without the benefits they deserve, I have one thing to say: no more.